All right, so hey everyone, welcome to the session. The title is Connected Vehicle Applications for Smart Cities. My name is Edward Fiddler. I'm the head of transport research here at ARC, and we have 4:30, so let's get started. Just a few quick housekeeping points. So today's session will be 90 minutes. I'll give a very quick introduction, and then we'll have speaker presentations, and we'll end with a panel and an audience Q&A. So we'd love to hear from you. We just ask that you submit your questions via the Q&A function in your control panel, as opposed to the chat, and we won't be monitoring the chat. All right, so I thought we could maybe just frame the session a little bit with some of the issues that we're seeing in transport, and then we talk about how we can solve them. So problems in transport. We have 275 million private cars in the US, and only 250 million adults. They sit parked the overwhelming majority of the time. We travel about 3 trillion miles every year in those cars. Unfortunately, we see about 40,000 road deaths every year. The majority of that is attributed to human error. We have 50,000 premature deaths caused by air pollution just from the transport sector, not power gen, just transport every year. Our cities are basically built for cars. We have pretty much fortunes in real estate value dedicated just to roads, street parking, lots, and garages. Transport is, of course, the largest emitting sector of CO2 in the US. And traffic congestion. We waste $87 billion in opportunity cost. We spend a lot of our time, stress, sitting in traffic, right? And this state of affairs is caused by distracted, error-prone human drivers, that's us, taking our private vehicles for almost every trip, all powered by fossil fuels, right? So how might you address that? So what's emerging now and what we're seeing now is something that's been called the ACES transition or the CASE transition. So ACES stands for autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. So the idea is, can we reduce vehicle miles traveled? Can we reduce vehicle miles traveled and increase vehicle utilization by leveraging shared mobility and mobility as a service concepts? Could we make sure that the miles that are traveled are done cleaner, so powered by electric powertrains and clean energy? And can we make those miles safer and have the vehicles piloted by machines? So that's autonomous vehicles, or humans that are augmented by connected vehicle technology. And of course, that's the subject of the session today. So connected vehicles. Connected vehicles, this is an IoT application, and it's allowing vehicles to wirelessly transmit data to and from other vehicles, roadside infrastructure, and infrastructure owner-operator networks. And the idea is that doing this can increase safety, road network efficiency, enable eco-driving, and a whole set of valuable business use cases. So for example, by transmitting position, direction, and speed data to vehicles nearby, a driver can effectively see around corners and through obstacles. They can see that the vehicle, three vehicles in front of them in traffic on the highway is coming to an abrupt stop, and they can know to be careful and avoid the collision. A connected crosswalk can send out a ping to nearby cars, telling them that somebody stepped into the street. A connected work site can warn oncoming vehicles that there's construction happening and they should slow down many miles before they actually approach it. There's also a piece here about with connected vehicles enabling vehicle autonomy. And we know that many autonomous vehicle installations today leverage connected vehicles as well, just to amplify their eyes and ears. We also know that the space has been held back the last few years by regulatory uncertainty. But recent changes in Washington and the new administration seem quite favorable to the industry. So we're very excited to see how the space evolves from here. So with that, let's get into our presentations. We have many phenomenal speakers and panelists today. So I'm actually just going to let them each introduce themselves when they either present or when they join the panel. So first we'll have a presentation from Peter Vega about Florida DOT's CV deployment. And then we'll turn it over to Jeff Dailey to talk about CT-RMA's deployment down in Texas. And lastly, we'll open this up. We'll invite everyone for an audience Q&A. So please do send in your questions. Thanks. And with that, Peter, please take over.
Thank you, Edward. Just to confirm, you can see my screen, I hope.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, great. So you should be seeing a screen that says Florida DOT District 2 Connected Vehicle Projects. With that, I am showing several connected vehicle projects throughout Florida, but we'll focus on one specific one named Frame. It is located in Gainesville, Florida, right adjacent to the University of Florida, up here in the northern part of the state. My office and operations are out of Jacksonville, and through our infrastructure, we can remotely connect to this system via fiber optic through two separate lines. So with the Frame, the presentation I'm going to provide is the experiences encountered and some of the pitfalls you may want to look out for. Basic background, as was mentioned earlier, this is an effort for vehicle to infrastructure communication as well as vehicle to vehicle. And one thing that we wanted to attack, since it's low-hanging fruit, is vehicle to smartphone applications. For the vehicle to infrastructure, obviously we're going to be, for this project, we put in devices on mast arms and within cabinets. We also purchased onboard units for testing. We used dedicated short range communication, DSRC, with background knowledge that 5G may come into play in the future. So based on all of that, when I was first asked to take on this project and begrudgingly said no until my boss said yes, we basically, our minds went just like this, all these words, all these thoughts in our head. How do we deal with this? We've never done it before. At the time, Florida had only done 2 connected vehicle projects. One was in Tallahassee, which was semi-successful, and one in Tampa, Florida, which is still ongoing. It was with the Hillsborough Expressway Authority. So there was not really anything to lean on except the knowledge, basic knowledge they've received, and also the knowledge from Michigan. So we're talking about using DSRC 75 megahertz radio spectrum. I'm not going to go into much detail on that because I'll be talking about it later. But it is dedicated to public safety and non-public safety. It's been that way since 1999. And it was primarily safe for vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure uses. So if you haven't ever seen what's involved, it's pretty straightforward. You have several products. You have your onboard units. So each vehicle needs to be equipped with one. Currently, there aren't many to get great penetration out there on the roadways, but we purchased them on this project. We have our roadside units. They are placed at all the intersections that we want to collect information from. And then we have our roadside equipment, which goes within the cabinet. Just another picture of Florida and what I'm focused in on. The project I'm going to talk about went up I-75 by Gainesville and throughout the city. If you're not familiar with Gainesville, Florida, we have several state roads that surround the campus. Just about every intersection we could touch, we put in a roadside unit, as well as about 30 miles of I-75 in Alachua County. The basic project overview is we wanted to get the simple stuff, the SPAT, MAP, and TIM broadcasts, which have been done for the last several years. We wanted to get some basic safety messages incorporated. And then we wanted to try something that really had just been touched upon by the industry: emergency vehicle preemption and transit signal priority. There wasn't really a clear standard on that, so we wanted to see what was out there in the market. With the future, we did consider pedestrian type applications. We're still working on that. We have had some success, but from a DSRC perspective, it's very difficult because you don't have any people on their bikes or walking with a huge radio to talk to the equipment. And then some of the other applications we're also going to look at. So I mentioned RSCs on the interstate, RSCs at several signalized intersections. We got the SPAT and MAP done pretty quickly. And then what we do is we share that information with the onboard unit on vehicles that had it installed within our city. We also did some roadside equipment. So we initially entered this project with just one thought in mind, but then we decided, hey, let's try a non-DSRC type system in order to test one vendor against another and see what would be beneficial in the future. So we deployed, like I mentioned, 93 signalized intersections and 35 cabinets along the interstate, spanning about 30 miles. Here's a nice picture of the University of Florida. No, I didn't graduate from there. I got kicked out my first semester and ended up at a secondary school in Florida. But the partners are the Florida Department of Transportation, in conjunction with University of Florida, which have several research projects building off of this, City of Gainesville, and then the public road users. So let's talk a little bit about, I may have skipped a slide. Let's talk about the selection. So we had to decide which team, which was the best approach. We had the choice of design, bid, build, system manager, and RFP. And we decided to go with a system manager approach. We interviewed 3 firms, Atkins, Metric, and I believe HNTB. And from that, Atkin was chosen to lead our team as the system manager. Some things with the system manager that I'm going to talk about are selection. So it's basically an interview process where we go into partnership with an engineering firm that walks us through the process of selecting the equipment. They also go ahead and perform the design on the project, and then they finalize it by helping us with procurement of the equipment, testing, and validation. Once we partnered with Atkins, we went out to the industry. We said, hey, we're interested in this project being supplied. So the vendors came into play, and we invited them to our research facility in Tallahassee. We had an analysis system, the basics, map, SPAT, TIM, BSM with some additional features. And from that, we selected 2 vendors, Applied Information and TrafficCast. So here's what I was talking about at the Turl. They came to the facility in Tallahassee. They showed us their wares. We compared it against the national standards, and we let the best firm win. And from that, we took the winning vendors, which were Applied Information and TrafficCast, and we put them out in the field testing, just to ensure that what was in a lab environment actually would work within a real world environment. One of the criteria we asked is that they work with our existing controllers, so that we didn't have to take out 93 controllers and replace them with what worked with their product. We had traffic aware devices throughout the city. and it just meant updating the firmware on some of these locations to make it work. Straightforward picture of how it works. Controller ties into the switch and everything else is connected to the switch, and through magic, it all comes into play. I should mention that Savari is our onboard unit that we utilized during this project. In conjunction with Denso, I should say. So the equipment procurement with the system manager approach, what the department learned is through it, we could determine which vendors best fit our needs. We would sole source them using the justification of testing. And then we got some pretty good pricing out of the effort. Probably saved ourselves about 20% versus going with a contractor design bid build type approach. Once we pick the vendors, this is all done simultaneously, I should say, as well, which shortened the project timeline. Once we picked the vendor, we simultaneously were doing the design through Atkins, making sure we had all our pieces in place, coordinating with the vendors and make sure that what we had in the infrastructure was capable of working with their product. At the same time, again, simultaneously, we had to go ahead and fill out all that laborious paperwork for the FCC. Hopefully none of them are on this session, but if they are, it's very labor intensive. So we utilized our general engineering contract out of Tallahassee to fill out all 93 plus, I think it was 120 forms, providing detailed info, lat long, serial number of the product, all the minutia, which thank God we had consultants to help us with.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. We seem to have lost your audio just a minute ago. No, it's still missing. Do you have a different microphone you could use? No, we can't hear you, Peter. You could try to maybe use the laptop's built-in microphone. Okay, well, what we could do is actually go on to the next presentation and let you take care of this on the back end. And then we'll come back to this after. All right, perfect. Jeff, maybe you could take over from here.
Okay, now the pressure's on me. I hope I don't have any. Hope everything goes on okay here. I'm firing
Sorry
up
to
here.
put you on the spot there, Jeff, but I know you can handle it.
All right, so you can see my screen okay?
Yes, perfect.
All right, good. All right, so my name is Jeff Dailey, of course. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. A lot of words. And it's really encompasses the Austin metropolitan area. And we're a pretty fast growing area. Just seems like a lot of a lot of areas around the country are these days. We're about 2.3 million. We're anticipated to get another 700,000 over by the end of this decade,
Hi, this is Pete.
2030.
Oh, yeah, we hear you now.
You want to go ahead and finish out with Peter?
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeff, to put you
right,
on
I
the
got
spot
warmed
like
up.
that. Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the inconvenience, folks.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything. I was just doing the PowerPoint, so something
Okay,
weird.
no worries. Things happen. Thanks again, Jeff, for jumping in so quickly.
All right, so okay, so I was talking about system configuration, and the problem that we ran into there again is disparate firmwares, trying to interpret how each vendor was handling the standards. So we spent a lot of time on that. We actually lost about 6 weeks dealing with that end. I'm trying to get the project going. And then project testing. So once we got all the configuration done, project testing was a piece of cake. We worked with the vendor's software package, the vendor themselves.
Hello.
And it ended up, testing was pretty quick and easy and painless. Troubleshooting, no issues with the contractor. They were in and out very quickly. Most of the troubleshooting was determining how to manage the data. The key problem we had, which is something to keep in mind, you need to have a strong network support staff and communication system, because a lot of times we get calls from the vendor saying, hey, we're not getting any data for the last 24 hours. And it was because of the network due to some IT issues at the back end. And then as far as the final step, we didn't have a security credential management system vendor in place before the project started. So near the end, we started working on the certificates with ISS, and there was a process to go through with that. We're still in that process to make sure that we have everything communicating through security. And the hope is that we will complete this within the next month. So the benefits are, it allowed the University of Florida City of Gainesville to do the research that's needed for future expansion in Florida. It gives the opportunity to test the vehicle, some of the neat things coming up, emergency vehicle preemption and transit signal priority. It also allowed us to evaluate the benefits of connected vehicle applications, operational type stuff. Hopefully in the future, we can add to the benefits of connected vehicle. Some of the challenges were a lot of these applications are still under development through the standards. So again, firmwares need to be upgraded several times to make it work between different vendors. There is a low CV penetration out there. So from my standpoint, I tell our leadership that we will not be CV ready for years through this process. And that's where the phone application came into play. So both vendors do provide the capability of using the cloud to get the information to the motorists. The benefit is it will also reach the pedestrian through a phone app. And the key concern was latency. We haven't witnessed that. Latency is about less than a second within the city limits. Obviously in Florida, the more rural you go, the less likely you're going to have that same speed. Drivers are unaware of connected vehicle technology, so it's going to be the vehicle manufacturers. They're going to push the market, and as it becomes a standard in vehicles, that motorists will become more acclimated with the features. And then limited support for CV operations and legacy signal controllers. So fortunately, all of the controllers were ATC ready to handle connected vehicles, but we do have some parts of our district where it's going to be changing everything out in the cabin in order to make it work. So with CV evolution, I'm going to touch a little bit upon this, is we have 5G technology. That was kind of a curveball because it came in just as we were getting ready to, we'd already made the purchase, and then we got the notification about 5G. And so we've talked about CV to X and what we're going to do. So we ended up buying, or not buying, but we've been examining and researching and are about to buy edge device or smart box. We tested MH Corbin, we tested Cisco. We've made our decision on which edge device we're going to utilize, and that's going to be our conduit as things change in the future. And then we also looked at LiDAR detection to supplement our efforts for pedestrian. The biggest challenge that we've run into is with the smartphone applications, everything we know does work. So that's a benefit. But the thing we're going to run into in the future is what's going to happen with the bandwidth. We've heard that they're looking at giving it all to C-V2X and grandfathering out the SRC. Unfortunately for us, we have, like I said, over 120 devices in the field, and it's not as easy as switching out the chip like we initially thought. The fear is that we would have to remove all of our DSRC units, including onboard units, and then switching over to C-V2X. Right now, that cost is pretty extensive. So it's kind of a wait and see. We had the money, we were about to do it immediately, and then we decided to hold off until the new administration gives us clear direction. So once the FCC chairwoman and US DOT give us the path we're supposed to go in, we'll put the project back in gear. We're still doing the operational stuff. We're doing the data collection. And it's just a matter of what type of communication system should we use, DSRC versus C-V2X. And with that, I'll take questions at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
All right, and Jeff, if you could share your screen.
All right, back on here. Yeah, Jeff Dailey, I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority. So I'm going to give you a perspective of a toll agency, a regional toll agency, in a fast-growing, kind of a high-tech area, Boston metropolitan area, and talk a little bit about our innovation technology program, how we're going to be try to embrace and learn and help to develop this new connected vehicle, autonomous vehicle technology, setting up a roadway system, and also how a partnership with Kapsch and Ford is helping us to advance that. So, you know, toll collection, I mean, it's changes everywhere, right? I mean, it's crazy. Just thinking back 30 years ago till like just even 10 years ago, there was a decent amount of change, but not like what we're seeing now. Had toll plazas, toll collectors, coin baskets, and they're still out there, believe it or not, but they're going away quick, especially with this COVID situation. Our system is all electronic. Shortly after we opened our roadways, we converted to all electronic and mirrored what TxDOT was doing. So electronic toll collections is prevalent now. And we're going more toward license plate based technology, but we're advancing and looking beyond that. What's 2050? What's it going to look like by 2050? It's significantly different than what it looks like now, for sure. You know, we're moving toward third-party payment systems. Mentioned Kapsch. Kapsch has their own app, but before you had the toll agencies that have their own back office systems, along with their toll apps and toll back and customer service centers. That's going to move toward a third-party payment system that's going to be changing significantly, and the back office systems are going to change significantly, likely in the next 10, 15 years. And what you're going to see on this Ford video that Brennan's going to have is kind of give you a glimpse of what that could look like. So, and ultimately, it's going to go toward road user charges. That's what we all think and see, and that's going to come a lot faster than what we all are expecting too, I imagine, especially with the electrification of the vehicles. The gas taxes are going down. We're going to have to find revenue somewhere. So from our agency standpoint, what does it mean for the toll industry and our agency? And how do we strategically position ourselves? A little bit about our agency. It's created in 2002 as a multi-county entity set up solely funded by tolls. And it's to help advance the local regional initiatives. You know, there's always a conflict in priorities from a state level versus the local level. And this gave the Central Texas area an ability to advance some significant regional projects. And we've built a lot of limited access highways that wouldn't have otherwise been built without the creation of this agency. Our limited access highways also have frontage roads. So that's kind of a competing facility, but also it's an alternative for people that don't want to pay the tolls. They can take those roads. Our revenue is about 110 million. We've been aggressively expanding the system. Austin's growing very quickly, so you need to have a lot of roads. Our agency can do a lot of different things. We can even do airports, which may come into play with drones in the future, on transmissions lines. But right now, we've been primarily focusing on the toll road capacity, getting the capacity that's needed. Not much happened in the Austin area as far as road capacity over the last 30 years, and we're trying to play catch up right now in addition to taking on, try to handle the new growth. And we've built the agency around an outsourcing model. We've got core staff, but pretty much contract everything out. I think it's an optimal way to do it. It keeps us on our toes with the private sector, helping us drive our projects and organization forward. And we're focused on innovation and experimental technology. Like everybody, we got our revenue impacted by COVID. You can see here, we got a drop off last year, almost a year ago, of about 61% drop from what we normally would be. We're still not where we were. We're still down by about 12%. It's probably going to take us a couple of years to get back to where we thought we were going to be. It hit the express lanes, the dynamically priced express lanes, significantly harder. We're still down about 30-40% on that now, on our express lanes. Our road to technology evolution, you know, we started trying to make sure we setting up our infrastructure to handle whatever's coming down our road. So I think a lot of people, you're putting in your communication systems, having your fiber optic backbone. We've got an agreement with TxDOT. We've got a regional backbone of fiber optics to help support the communications of the future. Blue Toad readers, ITS systems, those are pretty much standard. A few years back, put in our Wavetronic sensors to track vehicle speeds. That went in along with the opening of our first dynamic priced express lane in Central Texas. Traffic Management Center. We then initiated an innovation program, an innovation initiative, and put some resources behind it to try to embrace what was coming at us. And then we developed our roadway tech plan, and that's the bottom line, to set up a test bed and put in, again, the right kind of infrastructure to handle what's coming at us. Our innovation roadway technology plan is kind of based upon this pie chart here. Again, the private sector is going to play a key role in that. There's no way in the world as government entities can really do these kind of innovations. The best we can do is just partner and set up the system and let the private sector do its work. And that's our philosophy. So we want to have a test bed to advance both tolling and mobility technology as far as safety and traveler information, and then advancing regional collaboration. And so we mentioned we have a traffic management center. Austin has one, TxDOT has one, our bus system has one, and they're starting to be virtually linked, but we're really making the regions moving toward a more regional effort to get us all connected and in a regional traffic management center. So that is something that we think is important for the future, sharing our cameras. I mean, it seems basic. And I know that, Peter, you know, with Florida is very advanced in that regard, but a lot of areas in the country are not. And so this is, I think, an area that, as far as agencies, we all need to do better and put a lot of investment. Everybody's talking technology, but there's not a lot of resources put in there to back that up. And so we're starting to ramp that part of the program up. A couple of pieces that we've already put in place. Again, the sharing, we're going with a unified Lone Star traffic management system. We've moved toward that. That's a similar system to what Florida has, based on what Savari produces and supports. But now we've contracted with a company called Waycare, and it's basically a software as a service, and it takes vehicle information from here or WeJo and other services. So you've got a lot of connected vehicle information available out there, and it develops, has an algorithm that we meld the information from our roadways and this connected vehicle information, so then we can predict incidents and use it as, not only predicting incidents, but also help us communicate out to the public. So that piece of communicate out in the public is going to be key to our goals over the next several years. We've put a number of roadside units out on our roadways. We've done the dual band so we can take advantage of either DSRC or the CVDX 5G and wrong way driving systems. So the immediate term focus is to try to deliver immediate safety benefits for clearing accidents, detecting accidents, keeping the roads open as quickly as possible. And then the next phase is, how do we communicate information to the drivers? So it can be more location specific. And that's where this CVDX and even a potential app for people that don't have the newer vehicles, to put that into play. Leading into the tolling discussion, next generation tolling. So the next step, as I mentioned, the AVI, which is automated vehicle identification. That's your tags that you have in your car. And then you have your pay by mail, license plate based tolling. That's becoming mainstream with the license plate based tolling. But that part of it is high risk. As you can see here in the Central Texas, we get about in our high 60s of the amount of people using the tags. So that's pretty reliable. That's tied to a credit card account. We get paid and the risk is low there. The other part of it, the other 30% is high risk. It takes a while to track down. You got to send bills and not all of them pay. In fact, you'd be surprised. I mean, it's probably about 50%, and that's what you'll find at most agencies. But still, at the cost benefit over having these, the toll collectors and the impacts on traffic flow, it still far outweighs having that situation of yesteryear. So we need to find something better. The other thing we see out of this is, GPS-based tolling or some other version of that will help us lower infrastructure costs. You're not going to have all these gantries and loop detectors, cameras ultimately. Having the vehicle, having this, the toll collection tied to the system of the vehicle is going to be superior to what we have right now. Improved accuracy, efficiency, lower collection costs, just the enforcement of that. The vehicle, the identifier and the charge is tied to the vehicle. Plus, it can expand a range of payment options and features for the customers. We've done some tests with Kapsch and Ford, Kapsch roadside units, and Ford. Brennan's going to talk a little bit about that, and he has a video he can show, but we've done some testing on our standard toll road, and then it's also with our dynamically priced express lanes. And so they're following the SAE standards for developing that. So that's our first step that we've already done last year. And when the next phase will involve advancing that. And also with, we want to advance the communications with the mobility technology, so we can communicate to the drivers, location-based. You don't get stuck on roads. An accident, when you're coming up on it, you don't have to get on the road and get stuck. So that's the thing. We're trying to just communicate better and clear the accidents faster. And just go into this. So the CVDX technology, using the HERE and WeJo and Waycare, we're going to see that as an instrumental in helping us communicate better with our customers. Speed information, roadside sign information, you can get it reported right into your vehicle. You don't have to wait 2 miles when you come up upon a dynamic message sign. You can get that right in your vehicle. So overall, again, I think the benefits are going to be even greater when it comes to the roadway technology type things, the dynamic message signs. We were looking to putting on our express lane about $10 million investment to put additional dynamic message signs out there to give people more frequent information. We went out and did a user survey, did some panels, and they said, we don't really trust, believe it or not, what's on those things. We look at our phones. We make a decision when we get in there before we leave our trip. And really those dynamic message signs are only a confirmation of whether or not we're going to make that final decision or not. But they rely on our phones. So then we said, hey, let's step back from making that investment of $10 million and put it into the new technology. And so that's really our focus. Ultimately, and unfortunately, this may be blocking that upper screen there. But anyway, we're headed toward a road user charge. And it could be 10, 15 years from now, maybe sooner. But you're already talking California, Oregon, Wyoming, Nevada. Other states are already talking about doing pilot programs. I think it's going to be here before we know it, especially, again, what I mentioned with the electrification of the vehicles. So that's going to open up a whole range of options and capabilities. Rather than the back office being an individual toll agencies, you're looking at it, maybe a back office for the state, or maybe there's a tolling as a service. This could go a lot of different ways. So again, there's a lot of unknowns out there. And what we're trying to do is just stick with the basic foundation, infrastructure, communications, the power, put the right infrastructure in, and partnering with the private sector to try to help answer all these questions. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I think Brennan, I don't know if this is the right time to play your video, but that's a pretty good show you got to display how the system will work.
Hey, Jeff, I could do that. So let me give a little lead up before I share my screen. So as many of you know, Ford is a supporter of CV2X, and really we see CV2X as DSRC 2.0. And you might ask why we say that, and it's because about 90% of the work that was completed with DSRC is incorporated into CV2X. So CV2X relies on cellular technology, whereas DSRC was Wi-Fi technology. We see it as a benefit as vehicles are becoming more connected, specifically that we can bring those features to our vehicles. So we partner with forward-looking transportation authorities. Jeff's a great example with CTRMA and the CV2X units that they agreed to deploy on their transportation system. But I'd also like to say that we're working on projects with Florida also. And I've personally visited the Gainesville and iframe installations, and it's a wonderful job down there with those integrations and what Florida's been doing. Looking forward, so two great examples on this call of agencies that are really carrying the ball forward for technology and the benefits that are available to customers that are using the road. So I'll just play the video. So let me tee it up a bit. So Jeff and I with CTRMA in incorporation with Kapsch demonstrated CV2X tolling. Like Jeff said, we're working on an SAE standard for CV2X tolling. That standard is in SAE committees right now, and is coming up for a vote pretty soon. If you're interested, you can follow along. But really what we're proving out are next generation tolling use cases. Specifically, I am the advanced product and business owner for tolling work that Ford Motor Company is doing, and I'm part of the enterprise connectivity organization, which is intimately involved in all things spectrum, including what's going on with the FCC and CV2X. So as part of that deployment and testing, we did real world testing on CTRMA roads that was leading up to the IBTTA, International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association annual meeting in Austin, Texas in September, which didn't happen, unfortunately. However, we were able to demonstrate the technology and bring it to an audience via video, which I will show you. We do have in-market resources such that we were able to pull this off. Being Ford Motor Company, we have people everywhere. So, yeah, and in conjunction with a Kapsch and CTRMA, you can see what we accomplished. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And here we go.
Action. This is Katie, a Ford employee based out of Austin, Texas. Katie's going to take us on a journey along 2 Texas toll roads, Highway 45 Southwest and the Mopac Freeway. She's going to show us how Ford's CV2X tolling capabilities make her drive easy and hassle-free. Katie starts by accessing the fixed-rate toll section of Highway 45. Her F-150 alerts her to the upcoming toll road ahead, and when she passes the roadside unit, her vehicle initiates the charge to her credit card, which she has already set up in her Ford owner account. Account charged. Next, Katie heads onto a metered road to experience road usage charging. When she enters the metered section of road, Katie's sync display shows the per mile charge she'll incur, and the metering icon remains active while she's driving. Once she exits, the icon turns off, and when she parks the vehicle, she gets a notification of her total charge for that trip. To end her journey, Katie heads to downtown Austin. She starts on Cesar Chavez Street, going towards the Mopac Expressway, where she's alerted to the upcoming managed lanes. Toll road ahead. Her sync display shows her the current rates for each lane, and she chooses the express lane, knowing it'll save her time. Her F-150 confirms the charge for the express lane as she passes the gantry. Katie easily passes all the congested traffic before exiting at Far West Boulevard and receiving a final charge confirmation. Account charged. Thanks to Katie and the crew for helping make our Ford toll reveal a success in Austin.
Okay, that's the video. As you can see, utilizing the CV2X technology in conjunction with CTRMA and Kapsch. So great success, and we look forward to continuing the work.
Perfect. Thank you, Brennan. Thanks for that. Okay, so it looks like we're just about ready for our panel discussion and audience Q&A. Let's see, let's have everyone turn on their video. And then Brennan, maybe you can stop sharing that screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but
It'll be in the top in the middle.
yeah, hold on.
You hover over it, it usually pops up. Yep. Okay, perfect. All
Okay.
right. Thank you both for those presentations and for that video.
So
that
you
was
need
great.
to allow my camera when you're ready.
Oh, Sandeep, I think you need to allow Brennan to share his camera. If you can do that for us. Okay, so folks, we have some questions from the audience. Anyone who hasn't posed a question for us, go ahead and do that now, and we'll get to it by the end. So let's start with this. Peter, you talked about down in Florida that you're integrating vehicle to mobile phone, and I just find that absolutely fascinating, and it's just very relevant to how people interact with the world and how we do things. So could we maybe speak more about that and some of the future applications there and how people are reacting to that?
With the smartphone application, since the advent, it's the lifeline for most people. So we thought until we get to the point where we have more penetration from vehicle equipment and pedestrian equipment, this might be the method. Applied Information had been doing this effort for years, and so has TrafficCast. So we met with them and said, hey, for the time being, we want to try out the phone app. provide the same information. It was available. So we actually committed to a separate project on I-10 from Atlantic Ocean, Jacksonville, all the way to Pensacola, the edge of Alabama. And that's where we're going to exercise these phone apps. The positive right now, like I said, was the latency was a lot less than I expected. Initially, I was like, no way, it's not going to really happen. It's not going to work properly, but it has. So it gives us an option of reaching out to more roadway users with the phone app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the common reaction most folks have. It's like latency will be an issue, but I guess not. I realized we didn't give a few of the panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So maybe we could do that right now.
Frank, Ravi.
I'll start then, I guess.
Go
My
ahead.
name's Frank Provenzano. I'm a business development manager now for Iteris. So TrafficCast was recently purchased, so I have a new employer. Looking forward to working with Iteris. I guess we match up. Iteris has done some work in the connected vehicle space, and now we're looking forward to adding our infrastructure technology there. And so I've been in the connected vehicle space since back in 2004, 2005. Back then, we tested, showed off the proof of concept for connected vehicle, the SRC technology in San Francisco. It was the ITS World Congress, and the city of San Francisco actually allowed us to install those early RSUs on their streets. Looking back at it now, I thought that was pretty advanced, courageous in some respects, but it allowed us to get started and really start to prove out some of the standards and some of the technology, and it's evolved ever since. So I've been very excited to be part of many projects like the one in Florida, working with District 2 and Pete Vega. It's a great partner to have.
Maybe Ravi can go next.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ravi Puvvala, founder and CEO of Savari. We've been in the connected vehicle business for the last 10 years. Lately, we've been supplying the core V2X technology to many auto OEMs, including Ford. We're also partnered up with TrafficCast to provide some core technology to build the roadside units. In the past, we have participated in many CV pilots, including Tampa Bay. We were in Ann Arbor, done a lot of the pilot programs. Now really excited about moving into production, both for the vehicles as well as the infrastructure.
Great, perfect. And we have Steve.
Yeah, hi, this is Steve Sprouffske. Can you hear me? I'm the national practice lead for Kapsch Trafficom. And Kapsch is a broad portfolio of solutions within the ITS and the tolling space. We've been in specifically towards connected vehicles, really like the colleagues with Ravi and Frank here, since really the beginning of the connected vehicle journey, if you will. So here we are again, and happy to be part of this panel and join the discussion.
Perfect. Okay, so a moment ago we were chatting about the mobile phone perspective here. And Peter, you mentioned that you were sort of driven in that direction because, well, the industry has been a little bit slow to roll out infrastructure. And part of that is the regulatory angle. So maybe we could just give perspectives on sort of the roadmap for infrastructure rollout going forward, and maybe in light of the recent changes in DC. And that's for anyone
Yes.
to take.
So as far as our standpoint, I know right now I'm working with our district on several infrastructure grant applications, and we're encouraged by US DOT and state leadership to incorporate connected vehicle technology in all of our efforts, specifically freight in Florida. And that's a good thing because in the overall scheme of things, it helps reduce the capital costs for roadway improvements if we could maneuver and manage traffic through technology. We have a new leadership in Washington. We have a new FCC chairwoman. So things are looking positive. whether it's CV2X or DSRC. The key thing now is to give clear direction to the manufacturers so that they don't spend money, waste on their investments, and can get the product out there to the end users. And just as a caveat, I started with connected vehicles about the same time as Frank, 2006. And we were field ready, I felt, by 2012. And that's when we got the news from US DOT that we didn't realize how fast the manufacturers and vendors would be. So please hold up until we get our standards in place. That's kind of been the setback that I've seen in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else want to comment?
Yeah,
So just to be clear, I mean, the NPRM from FCC sunsets DSRC. So CV2X has been granted, I think it's 30 megahertz. So we're able to use that as a manufacturer. Previously, Ford has announced that we're proponent of CV2X and would be launching into some of our vehicles in 23, given a favorable regulatory environment. However, as some of you said on the call, I mean, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done from the FCC to make this production ready from a manufacturer's point of view with the buttoning up of the standards.
And
But you
also,
did mention,
as part of the commitment with the infrastructure, you know, we've been working with TrafficCast on helping a lot of the state DOTs to make a commitment in terms of helping them transition to different types of CV2X technologies that would be coming up, right? The existing ones are based on 4G. You would also expect to see something that's based on 5G, but from an infrastructure perspective, they got to be ready with, you know, multiple radio technologies. And I'm sure Frank wants to talk more about like how we're going to help a lot of the state DOTs and other customers, you know, helping them, you know, go through this sort of transition. Frank?
yeah, I was happy to hear Brennan say that over 90% of the standards will still be in place when we make this transition to this new communications platform. And I call it a communications platform because we really, you know, from our perspective, we have to provide local agencies with a foundation from which to work, right? And that starts with the connected vehicle radio technology. But we're not just the radio, right? We when we talk about how we affect different connected vehicle applications, whether they're centered around tolling, like you mentioned, or specifically safety applications at signalized intersections and other parts of the roadway, in addition to traveler information and mobility applications. Those are a big part of our scenario, you know, how, and then, you know, we're actively working with Florida, for example, and SunGuide. How do we share information between those traveler information platforms? And so everything is starting to be interconnected. And the way that we do that, interoperable, right? So there are many auto manufacturers, obviously, vendors for roadside equipment, and we all have to work together. And the only way that we can do that is laying out this foundation of standards and what the US DOT has provided us over the years now. And so when we look at a platform like CV2X and what that brings to us and the radio technology that we are going to transition to, then, you know, we really have to make sure that everything is in place. You know, and I always tell people like what we're developing today as far as connected vehicle applications really stays in place. And it's important that they're interoperable, that we work out all of these details as we transition to this new technology.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I mean, I can't agree more with what everybody said about, you know, the interoperability and the standards, and say too, you were seeing this migration towards, you know, infrastructure focused, you know, mobility and more, you know, kind of cloud-based and digital infrastructure. And I think that's where you're really going to see the next advent as we're bringing in, the not only C-V2X technology, which is going to migrate towards 5G and 5G new radio and those things, and other types of data sources coming in. We've had the Iteris and the HERE data for a while, but all these types of platforms that allow cross-market fusion of data and mutual beneficial services that we haven't seen previously. I mean, we talk in general the merging of the ITS and the toll type services and those types of deployments. But I think where we're going to be able to see the next generation of services are truly in these really cross-market type services that allow us to have an impact on the personal equity of the driver and their personal journey.
Jeff, as another public agency here, do you want to maybe comment on your perspective on DSRC and C-V2X? It seems that a lot of people have perception that it's a big scary transition and everything's deprecated now, but maybe that's not the case.
I mean, from our standpoint, it's as an infrastructure, setting that up, it's not a scary thing. I mean, we made the decision to get a dual band radio system set up. I mean, how it gets communicated doesn't matter. It's to matter how, do we have flexible systems? We got the fiber in place. So that was what it didn't cost hardly anything that much more to do it. So we just put it, what it was going to be flexible. Now we got the capability to do either. And so that FCC ruling didn't really impact us as much. I think that, from something we have to think about for agencies that we're finding out is our boxes, our power boxes, our communication boxes are undersized. So you want to add a few more RSUs out there or cameras, we don't have room. So you have to expand the boxes. It costs you a lot more. So we have to think about sizing our systems properly, so we don't have to worry about running out of room. So that's one of the things that we're seeing as toll agencies that we need to be thinking a lot about. We're also pretty involved in OmniAir, and it's been a learning experience for us in the last couple of years, just trying to get up to speed with what's going on. But really, it's in its infancy as far as the application development. So what's going to be interesting for us, and maybe Brennan has a thought on this, is the application for basic safety messages, how this stuff's going to be working between the agency or vehicle to vehicle. What kind of a role will our traffic management system play in these kind of systems, near term and long term? We're thinking it's going to have a pretty significant role probably in the next 10 years, but maybe beyond that, it'd be lesser. The vehicles will all kind of communicate with themselves and automatically tell you what's going on as far as the incident ahead, don't get on this road or whatnot. The reason I said that, because I just got caught on one when they shut down the road, a Mopac, because of the snow. And, had I known, had we had better communication system, it would have saved an entire trip or being trapped on the road for a while. Anyway, that's my thought on it. I mean, I'm curious about how this is going to, as long as we do our fiber systems and we put in flexible systems, we should be all right. That's my view. But we have to be informed by the private sector to make sure we're doing those kind of decisions right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you hit on it, Jeff, when you're talking about flexibility. I mean, as we look at right now, it's DSRC, C-V2X, and 5 years from now, it'll be C-V2X, something else, right? It's like communication technology is really evolving. So really, it's how do you set up your system such that it doesn't matter what the transport is, right? So as we look at what Ford is doing, I mean, we've already committed to have modems in all our vehicles since 2019 model year. We've committed to have the C-V2X in our vehicles pending the regulatory work that needs to be done. So we're looking at it as just another transport, but really a benefit to our customers, who are ultimately your customers too, as a private or as a government agency, to give them the information that makes their journey more palatable. We've all been in that situation where you're all of a sudden trapped and wish that you weren't. But as we see the communication coming into the vehicle is really is really growing, and there's a lot of different avenues to get that information in there, including that CV2X. So those traveler information messages, those BSMs going out are really going to help our customers, we feel.
Yeah,
Mhm.
if I could just add one other thought on here, what's interesting as well is, the toll industry was we kind of kept to ourselves, for a number of years. I mean, up until recently, and that it dawned on us, we've got to get and, build these relationships with the OEMs, the Fords and others out there, Kapsch. We have to get deeper in a deeper understanding of each other's business so we can really work and move this stuff along. We can't just sit back like it did for the last 30 years or 100 years. We build the roads and, everybody else does their thing. So it's going to be important that we're interoperable, what was said before, and we have a much deeper understanding, we have better decision-making going forward.
So that's the question of DSRC and CV2X. A lot of it is just radio technology, which you expect to improve, and that's not a bad thing. But the other piece here is the network-based solutions and how 5G, and of course the main buzzword nowadays, 5G, and how that's playing in and how that rolls out. So maybe some perspectives on that.
Well, from my perspective, it's basically, I look at it in two aspects, right? When we look at connected vehicle technology, the roadside unit, we have a very specific role that we play as a vendor that provides this technology, and we have to stay within our lane, basically. And our main function is to make sure that safety and mobility for vehicles on the roadway is provided with this platform, with this system. And so what that means is that, that interaction between a traffic controller, for example, at the infrastructure, signalized intersections, etc., and roadway safety, that driver, what information is that vehicle getting and is the driver getting in order to effectively move through that corridor safely. That's a very specific task, right? So we seem, and we have to stay within our lane. What I mean by that is that, we have this glamour associated with 5G, right? Because in our job as traffic engineers and providing that mobility through the corridor, right? We're not going to be sharing videos and that type of thing with the drivers or anything else. We have a very specific job to do. So in many respects, we treat the advent of 5G as a way to get us to perhaps a backhaul, maybe traveler information messages. So we have to really try to isolate it or define it as narrowly as possible to our specific job and what is required of us to do at the infrastructure as it relates to safety.
Yeah, I think I want to add too. That's a great kickoff there, Frank. And I think a little bit different spin, would be like the difference between the role of a short range type communication, which is the DSRC and CV2X, and then the network based, and long range communications, and each has their suitability for mobility within the ecosystem. But at the end of the day, each has a very important role that is not going to be diminished, over time. And it's so long as the FCC follows through with their position to support, the short range communication and that spectrum. But I would, also say too that one thing that kind of trips up the industry a little bit is kind of the marketing spin that's taken with 5G and confuses a lot. I know in our experience with Kapsch and dealing with customers, whether it's Dept or the CTRMAs of the world or others, is that people think 5G is one, it's here already, and two, it means the same thing as CV2X, and unfortunately that's not the case. 5G in of itself is, from commercial deployments, is many years away, regardless of what Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile, will have you believe. And C Vita X in itself is here today. It's while it's somewhat immature as compared to DSRC, it still offers that sustainability and scalability that we're looking for in a safety technology to help us advance these types of solutions. But as 5G does come into the market space, and you have the 5G new radio and the next generation of that technology, I think it is kind of exciting with the possibilities to reach different segments that we can't reach today, between vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure, and then even vehicle to pedestrian type services, where potentially you would have a device that is capable of communicating both in what I would consider the traditional vehicle to network type of environment, as well as the vehicle to pedestrian, really at that true vehicle to device type of an approach. So I think we're still some years away from that being deployed, but at the end of the day, you have that kind of a roadmap, if you will, to get there than what previously we didn't have, and we still had maybe some siloed business segments. Where those now with this new roadmap, we can sweep those away and truly have a collaborative ecosystem.
Thanks for that.
Jeff, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Jeff,
Yeah, I
think-
was kind of a different angle on this. I wanted to pose this question. I have a couple questions for Peter too, by the way, but I'll hold off here. Just thinking about, the 5G and our infrastructure and the roadways, and something I've been thinking a lot more about is, how you manage your fiber system, fiber optics, but also the wireless within that. We're talking about, this is going to be the Internet of Things and roadside units and others. It could grow exponentially, but how do you manage? There's going to be the AT&Ts, the Verizons. They all going to want to have access to the highways. What kind of mechanisms are out there for agencies to do allow for competition, but also allow for a good managed approach as opposed to the wild, wild west? So I didn't know if there's any models out there, that anybody's aware of, but it seems to me that we need to have more of a managed approach so that you can plan out the growth of these systems.
I could comment, something about that, Jeff. If you look at a lot of the operators today, right, when they build their servers or the infrastructure, they are multi-home, which means that even though you have a physical box like an open RAN, you can have multiple operators sharing the same infrastructure, right? So we're kind of moving into the same domain of, no matter whose roadside units, how the radio technologies are being deployed, it'll come back to an edge platform where you could, have AT&T, operate their context inside their edge platform, or Verizon operate that inside their edge context, right? So I think the road operators have to think about, kind of putting the CapEx for these kind of platforms, allowing these operators to, deploy their applications and a context inside these edge devices.
Are you aware of any agencies out there that are doing anything like that, more of a managed approach? I mean, that sounds like it's a way to go, but I think
right. I think again it goes back to the source of the funding, right? So many of the state DOTs, it's coming back to who owns the asset, how they control it. I think this is one of the missing things in the market is that there hasn't been an approach of how to show the shared, asset mechanisms between the road operators and the mobile operators.
Yeah, it seems like without, having a good approach, managed approach to that, it could almost inhibit, the development of this technology and, for the benefits to the users and the private sector. So It's just one of those things. I mean, we're relying on communications, but how can we facilitate that is what I'm getting to, and then manage it, because I think a lot of fiber optic systems are probably not managed the way they're supposed to be, but I'm probably getting a little bit off track here, Ed. So.
I kind of wanted to add to that if I could, because I think Ravi's got an excellent point about the shared, kind of shared infrastructure, if you will. But, if you think about the MNOs and their relationship to transportation, it's been non-existent. And, I don't want to, kind of beat them up a little bit. They don't know the transportation and ITS market. We're kind of unique in that sense, ITS as an industry, if you will. And so when you bring in an MNO and you see like the Verizon's talking about their smart city use cases, or AT&T, if you will, but it's still, they're still kind of, they call it the edge, but they're still far away from the corridor itself. And I think, it's a different business model to them, and it's a different kind of service set, a different customer base than they're used to. And I think there's a lot of education and a lot of learning that's going to have to go on. But I can't agree more that that's a huge gap between the actual transportation corridor and then bridging that gap to where the MNOs sit. But they are a valuable ecosystem that can supplement a lot of the data exchange and the data sharing that we're going to need as we bring in mixed environments, not only connected vehicles, but start to look at AVs coming into the ecosystem.
Right.
And Jan provided a comment about Utah DOT, which is very good. We tried that in Florida, where I tried to partner with third-party providers like AT&T and Sprint, and had my hand slapped because there's still hesitancy from government agencies to open the platform to private enterprise. And so if, I were to try to do something on the interstate, which is, basically overseen by the federal government, I would not be allowed to join into that partnership. So there's some hurdles from a government perspective still to overcome, with the understanding that technology shouldn't have any bounds, shouldn't have any barriers. It's all for the greater good of everybody. And we just have to, hopefully with the new administration, overcome those hurdles.
So some human and some organizational issues beyond the technology, which is a
actually, I had one provider. I had 5 miles of fiber optic that didn't have the money to deploy the network. So they offered to let me piggyback off of their deployment on the same road in a swap type of effort. And once it reached the higher levels of government, it was nipped in the bud. So that's sort of what we see all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all too common, unfortunately.
Ed, do you mind if I ask? You guys can all slap me down if I'm talking too much. But
No, we love hearing from you.
But Peter, you mentioned there's like 3 different models about implementation and management of your project. And I was hoping you could explain a little bit more. But that's the first time I've heard of that terminology and approach.
Coming from a government agency, we started off design, bid, build was the way it was done 30 some odd years ago. And then the design build came into play. Hey, if you go design build, you'll speed up projects, you'll save money. Well, that wasn't the case. Actually, projects went over budget and way beyond the anticipated schedule. So we had our Tampa district introduce us to something called system manager. And that's where the department takes control of the project, partners with some firms that they trust. And then from that, we do direct purchases with the vendors. So we remove that middleman, the contractor, and all the finagling. Price isn't a factor as far as concern, but you actually get a lower price. The first system manager project I did, when you look at markup costs and risk costs and taxes, we saved about 40%. So what should have been a $4 million project ended up around $2 million, $2.2 million. And so we've continued that effort with these type size projects. Now, when I had a 160-mile project on I-10, everybody in my district were like, why aren't you doing system manager? We love it. It's so much better. No issues, no claims. And the problem is that there's more effort required internally by your staff to manage a system manager, lots more meetings, lots more decision making. But at the end of the day, when you're done with the project, I've never had a project go over schedule, over budget, and got more than I anticipated in delivery, which is what happened with this frame project, way beyond my expectation.
Wow,
I like that. That sounds good.
that's amazing.
So that kind of sounds like what City of Denver was doing, if anybody's familiar with that, with their tech bench, where they go out and solicit expertise basically for different areas that they needed help with, and from connectivity to actually putting poles in the ground or whatever. So seems
Yeah,
to be
and just to kind of
popular.
give you a comparison, not to, hopefully not on the call, my partners in District 5, which is the Orlando district, we both started our frame projects about the same time. I took the system manager approach. They decided not to. They're a year behind on their project. Costs are increasing significantly. And while we're kind of looking at them in the rearview mirror, they're still trying to at least get to the testing phase of their project. So that was kind of a very good comparison of what's happened by using System Manager.
Wow. Yeah, it just goes to show that the technology perspective here it's important, but it's really only part of the story. You can have all the tech that you want ready to go, and if the bureaucracy, the organizational, the human side isn't there, or it's slow, it's not going to work out.
And Frank will attest to this. We hold their feet to the fire because we tell them, hey, we went through this effort, we picked you. And Frank will tell you, we've had some come into Jesus meetings during the projects, but it was all for the good. End of the meeting, everybody was happy.
No, it was a very collaborative. It's still a very collaborative environment. Like, we work very closely with Peter and his direct team, but we also work with the system project manager, Atkins group in this case, and we're toe to toe. Like with the Atkins team, for example, whether it's out in the field or in the lab or online or whatever, we work very closely together. Our support group works with their support group and make sure we deliver on what we have to do. It is a very, especially for this technology, we are at the end of the day proving out standards, we're proving out proof of concept application, and we run into issues, we run into questions that we have to look at. So, well, wait a minute, how do we handle flashing yellow arrow in a turn? So it's little details that come into play, and we have to work together to solve those problems. And at the end of the day, it becomes a real good, very, very positive experience, collaborative experience. And we feel like we're giving back to the industry as well, because we share those experiences, and that helps other agencies grow and use our experience to enable their projects and their applications.
We have a few more questions from the audience. We have two from Cassie K, and then I want to just end on touching on road user charging and the video that we saw. So the first question is, of course, the industry has been using DSRC, C-V2X, but is there any consideration for satellite for tolling and to access remote areas where the technology may not be efficient, right? I think possibly what they might mean is where it doesn't make sense to install the infrastructure, the roadside infrastructure.
I can talk about some of the satellite Sirius XM radios that were used in the connected vehicle Tampa Bay project. Most vehicles today have Sirius XM radios, right? I think they're really good at broadcasting, but having low latency two-way communications, the satellite radios today, they're not there yet, right? So they're good at for credential management. In a lot of the connected vehicles, we have to use the security certificates A lot of those kind of distributions where a bunch of data has to go to all the cars, satellite Sirius XM radios would play a role. But in terms of something that is sensitive to latency, I think this is the reason why we've been spending for the last decade to get the CV2X out on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so satellite has a role to play in vehicle to network potentially.
Yeah, right.
And I would just add to, I would just add to specifically to tolling. Kind of Jeff touched on this a little bit, but the mobile tolling is starting to become more present in the market space, where you have the app on your phone and use GNSS based geozones to identify the toll gantries. We're seeing this both in not only North America but also in Europe. Europe, it's in addition to their 5.8 DSRC that they have there, France specifically has GNSS based tolling in conjunction with the 5.8. So while it's not necessarily had the same concerns with latency that you would see on the safety side of the house, it is utilizing satellite-based infrastructure and kind of an infrastructure-less approach to the tolling market. But I guess especially from some of the customers that we have, enforcement is still a concern in that regard. How do you make sure the phone is on while they're using the road, and other types of challenges to ensure payment for the agency.
Yeah, I
Great.
just weigh in. I think that you're right. I mean, that's been the biggest thing, is like you can spoof the GPS with the phones, and if you can somehow tie that down in a vehicle, and it doesn't have to be real time. It's something you can get within connectivity range. But you got it recording. It definitely has got some great future. But the mobile phone, there's a lot of concern over that. But I think in the future, it's got some good potential.
Mm-hmm. Great. And maybe lastly, we could just talk about road user charging and how CV tech can help enable that. So Brennan, you showed a video, and the last few seconds you had that road user charging demonstration. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a project that Ford's exploring. We don't make commitments to deploy any of the technology that we're showing right now, but we see the funding. I mean, anybody that's been in ITS for any point in time or any bit of time has seen that the cost of maintaining and installing roads is going up and the funding systems are going down, right? So there's a lot of interest in road usage charging, and as it comes to CV technology, that's just another way to communicate with whatever agency that the customer chooses to communicate with. So with Ford, we believe that our customer owns their data, and we're just the steward of their data. And if they potentially agree to communicate to be part of a program like that, then we'd like to enable that.
Yeah, we see road user charging. I mean, I showed in my intro some of those images of just neck and neck traffic for miles, and it's really forcing the hand of regulators and government. And it's quite an elegant solution, right? All of us transport folks, and the economist types salivate over efficient road user charging. Just price the asset if it's being overused, right? So it's really cool that connected vehicles, in addition to all the safety, eco and business applications, could help with congestion, which it's just been growing and growing and growing all over the world. So that's phenomenal. Is there any closing thoughts? We have about a minute left.
I would just recommend that reach out to your local representative. If you believe in this, let's get the feet on the gas pedal. And, we have the smarts out there. We have some very talented people. And the holdback is of course, bureaucracy, which we need to kind of get out of the way and let us move.
Yeah,
I'm part of bureaucracy, so I'm guilty as well.
Right. No, it's coming from the bear itself. So that's a great way to end it. Okay. Well, I just want to thank our fantastic speakers and panelists. This was great. And thank you for everyone who attended and who's watching this recording later. Okay, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very
Be
much.
well.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.